What's up, everybody? Thanks again for joining me for another edition of March 4th with Mike Bauman. I, of course, am your host, Mike Bauman. Whoever you are, wherever you are listening from, thank you so much for checking out the podcast. If you're a returning listener, I greatly appreciate your continued love and support. And if you're a brand new listener of the show, man, thank you so much for hopping aboard that pirate ship. You can follow me on Instagram at March 4th Pod, on YouTube at March 4th Pod. My website is march4th.podbean.com. The link tree with all of my stuff is in the podcast description for this episode. You guys made it here, so you found me somehow, and I truly appreciate each and every one of you who's checking out another edition of the March 4th with Mike Bauman podcast. This is episode 110, y'all. Excuse me, it's crazy to think that I've gotten over the century mark here in the last 3+ years of March 4th since I rebranded the podcast and in 2019 really, and then started going gung-ho in 2020. And I'm just so excited to be on this journey, and I'm so grateful and thankful for everybody who's on it with me. It's crazy to say episode 110. I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back, but at the same time, I'm just proud that I've built something that I feel like is positive, and it's connecting with people, and it's making positive ripple effects. And, the positive feedback that I do get from family, friends, and even people I don't know, guests of this show, it really means a lot, man. So I genuinely want to say thank you to each and every one of you who takes the time to tune in, who takes the time to tell a friend, who takes the time to like and subscribe, leave a rating and a review on Spotify and Apple. Like, all those things go a long way in getting these conversations out to more people. And even though I don't take myself too seriously, I do take these conversations seriously, with the meaning of the show being perseverance and moving forward. March 4th, like that's something that I've really lived in my life these past couple of years, man, with some of the stuff that I've gone through. And I don't say that to feel sorry for myself. I'm just being real here, man. Between heartbreak, death, the pandemic, which all of us endured, there's, and some other personal stuff that I won't go into, man. There's been a lot of ups and downs and a lot of treading water at times for me in my personal life. But this show has been a place where I've been able to come and connect with a lot of really cool people. And to be able to do that and turn a negative into a positive, man, it's been very therapeutic and cathartic in my life. So when I say thank you and I love you, I genuinely mean it. And once again, if this is your first time aboard that pirate ship, I truly appreciate you joining. If this week's guest is who brought you here, man, welcome aboard. But getting into this week's episode, because I do have a tendency to rant, and I don't want to detract from the conversation. Again, just building on that theme of perseverance and moving forward and connecting with good people, it all ties into these dudes who I have on the show this week, the music they make, and even the name of their band. And those guys are none other than Arc and Eris of Set the Sun. If you love modern rock, if you love hard rock, if you love alternative rock, if you love metal, if you love electronic and ethereal elements, if you love lyrics that really, pull at your heartstrings and connect with you, these guys do all of it. From bands like, if you love Sleep Token, if you love North Lane, if you love Deftones, Dead Letter Circus, Carnival, all those types of bands, man, you will love Set the Sun. Their debut EP, In Absentia Volume 1, came out in July of 2022, and then they followed that up with In Absentia Volume 2, which came out in September of 2022, and they've collaborated with numerous different artists who they call the Collective, everybody from guys like DJ Lethal of Limp Bizkit to Keith Wallen of Breaking Benjamin, Clint Lowery of Sevendust, Ryan Clark from Demon Hunter, among others. They've also worked with producer Forrester Savell, who has worked with the aforementioned Dead Letter Circus and Carnival, who I love. He's also worked with Vegas Nerve, which is one of the musical projects of Doc Coyle and Sterling R. Jackson, who are also friends and guests of the show. And I know it sounds like I'm dropping a lot of names, but it's all relevant, man. And Arc and Eris, as you guys will hear, have known each other for a long time. They have a great musical synergy, and I really think it's cool that they have turn negatives into positives as far as negative emotions and be able to have music to channel it. Setting the Sun for them is about taking on the impossible and getting through it. It's about hope amidst the darkness and fighting through challenges and having a voice for unspoken conflict. So when I kind of read the mission statement of what these guys were all about, I totally connected with it, with the theme of this show being perseverance and moving forward, and especially just being a fellow heavy music fan. We geek out a lot on the aforementioned Clint Lowery and Sevendust in general. One of our favorite bands collectively in this interview, and shout out to them. They just dropped their latest record, Truth Killer, and it is awesome. Free shameless plug for Sevendust, one of my favorite bands. But yeah, there was just a lot of kinship with Arc and Eris in this episode, man. It's like I said on I think my most recent podcast. You know, it's like when you meet new old friends. I really feel like that, man. Michael Rosenbaum, I heard him say that first, and I'm stealing it, but it's true. Like, you know, these guys, you know, have a lot in common with me. I think as far as, you know, our musical taste, but also just how they carry themselves. You know, how they deal with anxiety, music being a form of therapy. So it was really cool to catch up with them. And, you know, in this episode, you'll hear about the new music that they're working on. So far in 2023, they've dropped 3 singles, led by Arrival, followed by The Truth, which they worked on with Clint Lowery. And it's awesome to hear him on that track. And the latest one that just came out a few weeks ago, going into this episode, because you guys are hearing this at the beginning of August, and the latest one is A Better Way to Bleed. It just came out on July 21st, and it's a tribute to the late, great Chester Bennington, and really ties in, that song in particular really ties in with the theme of this show as well, man. So, yeah, it was just great to catch up with these guys, to learn more about their story, to learn more about Set the Sun, and hear about their latest work that I just described, which is going to be off of their forthcoming LP titled At War. So without further ado, I'm going to shut my big yapper and give you guys my conversation with Arc and Eris of Set the Sun. Here it is. All right, well, Arc, Eris, thank you so much for taking the time, dudes, to do this. Like I was just talking about before we officially hit record, I have a lot of respect for what you guys are doing. Heavy music and ethereal type vibes and cinematic type vibes and electronic vibes are all in your music as well. And that's definitely in my wheelhouse. And you guys have put out a couple of cool singles building up to this forthcoming LP. And I know I'm excited about it, and I know the listeners are too. So thank you so much for joining, fellas.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, just as a place to start, dudes, we were talking about it a little bit before the jump, as far as the different people that you've worked with, and namely, and timely as of recording this podcast, because it's been out a little bit over a week, but your single, The Truth, was recorded with Clint. And I also believe that you guys worked with him on the debut EP as well from Sevendust. And he's kind of a personal hero of mine musically. I think Sevendust is finally, after all these years, starting to kind of get more of their respect on a larger level. I think they've always kind of had it within the scene. I think it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, you know, they're probably your favorite band or one of their favorite bands, you know, but just as a place to start with you guys and the music you make and the collaborations, what's it been like to work with Clint, and how cool is it to already see the reception that you guys have had just in 1 week with The Truth?
I mean, well, for me, it's been really, I have a similar kind of similar feel for it as you do, as you know, when you said he was a hero, personal hero. I mean, I think I speak for both of us saying that he's definitely one of our songwriting inspirations. Right. As far as heavy music, from I mean, it's been it's even from the earlier stuff, and then as a guitar player as well, just as a multi, he's a multi-instrumentalist, but like his guitar work is amazing. I think he's got a fantastic voice, and then his songwriting is really has been a huge inspiration for me and with Eris.
Yeah, I think Clint for us. I still remember when we were in high school, just rocking out to Animosity. For us, that was such a breakthrough record that just perfectly meshed, just like really heavy music that had so much depth and emotion to it, but with this beautiful aspect of like melody and like really complex rhythms. And it was a record for us that we just like couldn't stop playing it. I still remember it clear as day. And we always felt like Clint played such a pivotal role in the writing process. And when we got to work with them over the last few years, to your point, we got to work with them on a few songs. So we worked with him on, he helped basically come in at the end when we had a few songs that were complete. He was one of the first artists that we reached out to when we'd written the majority of our record. And we were looking for someone else to come in and tell us what was good. Like it's really not much more complicated than that. So because we're a 2-person outfit, you can kind of get deep into believing your own stuff is good or bad. It's hard to remain objective. So when we sat down with Clint, we took him through a bunch of tracks, and he helped us sort of piece together what he thought sort of had merit, and usually came in and added this extra little touch. So you're right. Like there's he not only guested on that song, but on the record that's coming out later this year, I think he helped co-write and add a few nice pieces to a few songs. So what was awesome about it is that I don't know if it's because we have similar tastes in music, but it was just really easy to work with him. He was so friendly, so humble, but we just had such similar musical instincts. So it worked really, really well. It was really cool to see, actually.
Yeah, I always joke that he's, my spirit animal in a lot of ways in music, at least. Because as Eris said, we have a lot of the same instincts, and we chase the same type of feels and go for the same vibe a lot of the time.
Yeah, what I've always loved about them, and even just the musical synergy, and thanks for sharing that, you guys, about him. He and John from Sevendust, like the way they go back and forth, and it's even been cool over the last decade or so to see their solo stuff, because then you can kind of hear what contributed to Sevendust,
For sure.
But the synergy that they have, I think what's really cool about them and about Clint is they really do have a signature sound. And in addition to that, they've also been able to expand on it over the years while keeping that core Sevendust sound. And kind of like you guys, it sounds like we have similar musical tastes. I was always drawn to that sort of that rhythm that they have and that bounce that they had to their music, but also blending it with the melodies. And then they have multiple people singing. Morgan is probably my favorite drummer, and then he does that cool kind of screaming type vocal. And I think the first song I heard was probably Black. But then the one that I really, I think, connected with and maybe go down the rabbit hole, because I was a little guy at the time. I was like 6th grade in 99, 2000, and I believe Home came out 99. And when I heard Waffle, I was like, yo, this is so awesome.
That's a shit. And that track is a jam for sure. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. My bad, man.
I know. I was just going to say one of our favorite records, I think for the both of us, was Animosity. Obviously we wore out the first couple, but when that one came out, we were just, the melodies and the emotion, the record's called Animosity, so it had there was a lot of intensity in that one, but I think that one spoke to us.
Yeah, it's a great listen front to back. Probably my favorite Sevendust record. They really take you on a trip on that one. Dead Set's a really good deep cut. I love that one from those guys.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
So for y'all, man, how far back does your guys' time go together? Just for people who are unaware listening to this, because I mean, when you listen to your music, there's definitely I think a synergy with you two as a duo as well, and your songwriting capabilities. Have you guys known each other a while?
Short answer is yeah. It goes a ways back. and we've written together as part of different projects, and I think over time we've gotten to sort of know each other better. And I think time has been our friend. It's built a relationship of trust, where I think we can push each other to go deeper and to push back. Like in the early days when you're writing as young guys, you want to be careful about not offending someone, or you might have a view for where a song can go, or where its potential is, and you want to be careful about not pissing someone off. But the older you get, the more confident you get, and you also get to see what your fellow co-writer is capable of. And so that I think time, the reason why we started Set the Sun with a new name, with new names for us as well, was because it finally started to feel like, I think, the music that both of us had always envisioned doing. We finally reached that point as collaborators where we could get to this overlap between what we both want that finally feels like something we've always wanted. So yeah, I mean, short answer to your question is it's been a while. We've known each other since high school, but that's been, I think, our secret weapon, which is time.
Mm-hmm. What he said.
And one thing I always like to ask people too, because I was speaking with another musician about this a few years ago, and he articulated it pretty well that, when you come across fellow heavy music fans, it's kind of like that Spider-Man meme where they're both pointing at each other like, oh, you too, sweet, because it seems to be maybe not so much anymore that I've lived in the Nashville area, because when I came here, I thought everything was country, and then I quickly realized, oh no, it's like everything is here. Some of the best musicians in the world are here, but for you guys, I always like to ask people, what was sort of the, we talked about Clint and Sevendust a little bit, but was there kind of a rabbit hole moment for you guys musically where you heard something heavy for the first time and you're like, ooh, that's like Pandora's box. I need to open that up and see what's going on there.
I think it's different for both of us, but for me it was going through Eris's music collection and seeing what he was listening to, and then kind of sharing my own collection. And back then we had all these what are they called, the Case Logic these folders of CDs, and we'd share that. But I discovered a lot of stuff I had never heard, and that was really gelling with the stuff I had already liked in his collection. And then we just started recording stuff, but that was for me, that's what it was a long time ago, but that's what I remember.
Yeah, I think actually I remember Arc introducing me to Sevendust and introducing me to, he was always a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole of heavier stuff than I was. I remember still being excited about getting an Elton John record, like I was pretty deep into pop and getting, I think my first CD was actually Ace of Base's The Sign. But what's kind of interesting is like we've never really been into heavy music that's heavy for the sake of being heavy. We like it when there's still an undertone of something beautiful, behind it. So I think we both really bonded over Deftones the most, but then what really sort of put it over the edge is like the first Linkin Park record. Like Hybrid Theory was just such a galvanizing moment. There was just something so inspirational about that record for both of us. I think it pushed us from being casual writers to wanting to write all the time. Like Linkin Park, I think, inspired both of us to pick up a pen, guitar, drum kit, and just like make more music. It was awesome, that record.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's very fair to say. That's a big part of it for sure.
I appreciate y'all sharing that, man. Yeah, that you guys would be surprised if you listen to the archives of even this show, man. Like, well, actually, no, you probably wouldn't be surprised because you're musicians. But that, as I've done more and more of these shows, Linkin Park and in particular Hybrid Theory have come up a lot in terms of an influence and really a game changer. That album to this day still sounds fresh. And it's actually interesting too, just to build on what you were talking about, Eris. Like, I'm kind of the same way. You know, for me, heavy music has, I think the best way I can always articulate my connection to it with people is it's always been a positive release of negative emotion. You know, it was always a place I could go to, you know, with those feelings of anger or sadness or hurt or whatever they may be. And it was always a way to kind of get it out. You know, the
For sure,
Untouchable
for sure.
from Korn really got me through my freshman year of high school. Sevendust. My parents got divorced in '99, and I remember the first time I heard, like, whether it was Waffle or like My Own Prison from Creed, like, you know, and then continuing
Yeah.
to like Linkin Park, all that stuff. Like, it was always a positive release of negative emotion. And then I got into Deftones, and they became one of my favorite bands as well as I got a little bit older, and really loved the balance of like the ethereal vibes that they do, and then sort of like the heavy kind of riffage that Stefan always brings to the table. So yeah, I relate to all that, what you guys are talking about in terms of not being heavy for heavy's sake, but the emotional connection to it, because it's a huge emotional draw for me as far as heavier music.
Yeah, likewise. I think um, a lot of our writing style comes from, you know, from those days, and from that record in particular inspired a lot of stuff for us, and it still does to this day, which is crazy.
Yeah, I was really geeking out learning about just with the theme of this show being perseverance and moving forward and Arc. I know we had traded a few emails getting ready for this, but even reading about the meaning behind the name Set the Sun, and just how you guys look at this as about taking on the impossible, getting through it, hope amidst darkness, and fighting through challenges and being a voice for unspoken conflict. I was like, dude, I relate to these guys on like a kindred soul level, man. That's so cool. But yeah, that really plays into the theme of this show about you know, using sort of or I guess maybe not using, but kind of walking through darkness to get to the light. And even listening to In Absentia, I know it touches on a lot of those themes, and it was kind of, you know, fleshed out during the pandemic, right, when a lot of people were in isolation and going
Yep,
through a lot.
that's right.
Yeah, I really related a ton, man, to just the theme of this musical project, and you can really hear it in the music. I don't know if there's even really a question in there, in addition to me tipping my cap to you, but for that to be a debut from you guys, man, I mean, bravo! It was really cool, and it was especially even cooler when after I listened to the music, reading up about kind of the themes that you guys have in this project.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think COVID was a weird time for most musicians, and it it was weird at first. At first, it was like kind of like surreal. Everyone's like stuck at home, and maybe there's something nice to it. But then it got weirder and more political and more divisive, and people became more irritable, and it felt like an alternate universe. And I think you can sense a lot of that. So the EP, this is the weird kind of story of like how we wrote the music. The EP was actually written after the record that's coming out now, which is kind of funny. Because COVID had sort of hit, and we didn't feel like it was the right time for us to drop the record yet. And we were just really inspired by what was going on. So we just kept writing, and it came together really quickly. So we decided to drop that first, for better or for worse. But it definitely has, it's a little bit darker in some ways. It's a little bit more raw than some of the record, which was, we had more time to work on that and flesh it out. It has a bit more color, more hope. I think it's got a little bit more variety than maybe the EP did. But yeah, it was, what I like about the EP is it's a really nice snapshot of that kind of very strange time, back when that first happened.
Yeah, some of the tracks that I really connected with, Invisible, Disposable, The Way Back. I mean, lyrically, there was a lot of like, you know, really, really cool moments in there. And even musically wise, I mean, I know you guys worked with a bunch of different people on this, everybody from like DJ Lethal to, you know, members of Breaking Benjamin, the Contortionist, Silent Planet. Can you talk about those those relationships just over the years and how that came together in terms of working with sort of a breadth of different artists?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing music for a long time, and we over the years we've made different connections with different people, from different artists from different bands and musicians, I would say that it was easier, I think, to get a lot of those guys involved on the EP, because of the timing of everything, because COVID was happening. Not a lot of, it's rare that, even when you want to collaborate with somebody or bring somebody on the record, or maybe even co-write something with somebody, they'll be on tour, or they'll be doing interviews or doing something. So I think the timing was everything about getting everybody involved. All those relationships are pretty unique. And we both have relationships with different members from different bands over the years. And I think having so many people from so many great bands, so many artists and musicians jump on our project, I think it just speaks to the music that not to like toot our own horns or anything like that, but all we do, all we've done over the years is shared our music with other creative people and other musicians, other bands, and just be like, hey, what do you think of this? Like, this is what we're working on. And we would get a lot of great feedback, and we get a lot of artists wanting to collaborate and wanting to write, wanting to maybe feature on a song. We took advantage of that during the pandemic, and we were able to get a lot of great people on that project.
And I think our goal is really to go after artists that, I mean, it's probably not going to be much of a surprise, but artists that we had a tremendous amount of respect for. And there's actually a few more collaborations that are coming out that are on the record, that are quote unquote like maybe might be seen as like a deep cut, or are for bands that we had a lot of admiration for when we were growing up. And so it was really a unique experience for us to work with people like Clint, and there's a few others, and we just felt like it was the right way to come full circle to sort of these people that inspired us in the beginning to actually want to write music, and I'm sure on some level influence how we write, to be able to take these songs that are basically in a final state, take it to them and see what they can add to sort of finish it off or add something else. Like I remember when we had Invisible, the song was more or less in the same structure that it is now. And I think Arc and I said, this needs a little bit more ass kicking to it. This needs some heavy vocals. And when we thought about who would be top of our list for someone to add some screams to the track, I mean, Ryan was absolutely top of the list. So when we got connected with him, it was obviously a privilege, but he was just perfect for the role. And it was so smooth. It was so seamless when he laid down his vocals. It was just exactly what we needed. He asked us what we were looking for. We gave him a couple of things that we had in mind, and it was smooth.
And he was particularly, he still is a collaborator. We actually have a bunch of songs that we've written with him. Because Invisible is one that we actually didn't write that one with him. But he, after having him on that song, which is the first collab we did with him, he really wanted to work on some more music with us, and he loved the vibe. We really had a lot of the same, influences and writing style. So it was really easy. We wrote a whole bunch of other tracks with him that we're actually super excited about, that hopefully we'll release further down the line. He was a special one to work with.
Yeah, it really flowed together well in Absentia. And then it was cool to even listen to Volume 2, which, I mean, for lack of a better way to say it, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like remixes that were, to me, definitely like had even more of an electronic vibe and more cinematic. I even noticed in the song titles, there was every one of them had either like 3 or 4 or 1 in it. So I guess part of me too wanted to know like kind of the creative motivation behind that. But that was, to me, that almost had like a cool, almost like a cinematic-y soundtrack type vibe, compared to the original release, which I really liked. I don't know if that's what you guys were going for, but I really dug that one as well.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on. I think that we've always appreciated remix records that are more than just a remix, not like just like taking out the drums and putting in, an electronic beat and processing the vocals. We always really were drawn to remix records that are more like for example, coming back to Linkin Park, their Reanimation record. I love that record almost as much as I love Hybrid Theory, because you take all the songs that you were so in love with and then you show a completely different side of them, sometimes tweaking the melody or bringing in different instrumentation, but they just have a completely different, it's like an alternate universe version of that song. So it's not just like a remix. It's really a completely different take on that same essence. And so we want to make sure that the record for volume 2 was really a completely different take on those songs. And they stand on their own. I think we're really, really proud of that record. I think it just, it showcases a different side of our sound.
Yeah, and one of the names, and there's I didn't even mention all of them that you guys worked with on the EP, and there's a lot of great ones for people to check out. But one thing that I noticed getting ready for this, you guys dropped Arrival and then obviously The Truth. But in addition to the music videos, correct me if I'm wrong in saying this, but Caber AI, I thought that was really cool, the way the music videos were done. It really flowed well with the music. But I saw that you guys work with Forrester Savell, and that I kind of geeked out on that because I'm a big fan of Dead Letter Circus, and I'm pretty sure he's worked with them in the past. And not to name drop, I've had Doc Coyle on the show, and his project Vegas Nerve, I know they worked with him, I think at least on one song. And so, but yeah, I'm a huge Dead Letter Circus nerd. So I saw Forrester Savell and I thought, wow, that really does fit so perfectly with what these guys are doing too, because there's a lot of, I think, musical similarities with what you guys are doing and artists that he's worked with before, like Dead Letter Circus.
Yeah, he's such an incredibly talented mixer. I find that the way that he approaches things is he really approaches it from the perspective of like being a composer and like what is the emotion that needs to get delivered at this point in time. And when we delivered the tracks for the record, we gave him a very hard project to work with because there is a lot going on. And I think if we ever do, reanimated versions of our songs for this record, there is a lot that's like tucked in the background. There's a lot to play with. So he did a really masterful job of getting across, I think, a huge variety of sounds that are kind of playing against each other and with each other, while still having sort of the right intensity. He's a really, really talented guy. And I think we sought him out because he just, there's one record in particular he mixed for a band called Carnival, called Sound Awake. And there's just so much storytelling. And I think his mixing is such a huge part of that. So we were really lucky to work with him. And I think he did a really incredible job.
Yeah. And I'm actually kind of happy you brought him up, Mike, because, a lot of times the people who are behind the scenes that make records sound the way they sound, and they get kind of forgotten or lost in the liner notes. So I really do love talking about those people, and they're such an important part of the process. He was great to work with.
Yeah, Carnival's another one too, man. I think that record you mentioned, Eris, I think that one, did that have Simple Boy on it?
Yeah, Simple Boy, Dead Man, such like iconic tracks.
Yeah, like they're another band too, kind of in that, to me. Not in terms of how they sound, but in like in the Sevendust vein, where I think if you were to talk to musicians in this world, they're like, oh yeah, dude, Carnival, Dead Letter Circus. But for whatever reason, they they don't get maybe the same kind of notoriety. And I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if bands are kind of cool with that because they have like their core people. But man, yeah, he did great work on with both of those artists, man. Because yeah, Carnival, I love too. I think actually Pandora, probably back in like 2009, put me onto them. That that I remember when Pandora came out, it was like your own personalized radio station, and there were a lot of artists that I got into because of that. But yeah, shout out Pandora for putting me on the Carnival. But yeah, I'm glad you guys mentioned that record. But and Arc, yeah, man, I always love looking at the names, like you said, and the people working behind the scenes on these projects, because I think for people that maybe are outside of the studio, or just sort of a casual fan, don't realize how much goes into actually putting the song together from like demo to the final song. And then, like you said, the art of really mixing and mastering in addition to production. And so yeah, all the names that you guys have worked with are people I have a ton of respect for.
Yeah, man. Yeah, for us it was the same. Producers as well, and producers, we do a lot of production ourselves, but we work with several producers. I mean, a lot of bands go through a number of producers over the years, and that can completely reshape your sound and overall and the vibe of every record. So all the personnel are a huge factor.
Yeah, just building up to this release, the debut. It's going to be not only it's forthcoming, but it's also the debut LP, right? At War. To get ready for this, can you guys kind of talk about choosing Arrival and The Truth as the first two to release? Because I really think both of them are really cool. I want people to check out the music videos. Arrival had a really cool spacey vibe, and The Truth had kind of more of a like a foresty sort of vibe, and the lyrics in both of the songs are stuff I'd love to get into with you guys as well. But what's that like? I mean, obviously you guys have been making music together for a while, but what's it like as you're getting ready for release, kind of choosing, all right, we want these ones to sort of be the lead offs, to get people ready for this? Is that difficult, or do you kind of worked it
for
so
sure.
much?
It's hard. Yeah. I mean, you kind of want to put your best foot forward, and you want to pick a song that you feel is a good representation of the record. So we felt like Arrival was a good first pick, in the sense that there's a lot of electronics. It's dark, but it's also inspiring at the end. There's a lot of emotion. There's also a non-traditional song structure, in the sense that it ends with this big bridge and outro. And that was a song format that we used a couple times on the record. So I think on the last on the EP, we were a little bit more standard structure, and you'll hear on the record there's a few songs that sort of steer away from that, and that was important for us to be able to explore new spaces. So we thought Arrival was a good intro, and I don't know. We wanted The Truth to get out there. We love that song. We love how it turned out. It had a lot of energy as well, and we felt like it was a good second segue. So I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to put into words. It's sort of like a gut feeling. We talked about it back and forth, and I think there were 3 or 4 songs that we were debating what should come first, second, third. We're trying to save. I want to say our best for last, but there's some good ones coming down the pipe that we're really stoked about, that we think you guys are going to enjoy.
Yeah, and Arc, from what I understand, you're doing lead vocals and guitar, obviously, and a couple of the lines that stuck out to me in both of these songs. If you wouldn't mind just expounding upon them a little bit for myself and the listeners, just because I'm a bit of a music nerd, and I love reading the lyrics, and I'm so happy you guys posted those on the videos too, because that's kind of like old school how I used to do it back in the day. I'd get the CD, unfold the cover art, read the lyrics as you listen. But in Arrival, you say, I want to be more than the man who survived. Can you and if you don't want to and you want to leave it open to interpretation, that's totally cool too. But that was a line that really stood out to me from that song.
Well, funny thing about that one is that a lot of that one actually, a lot of those, especially that line, I think came from Eris. So he might be the better one to answer that part. We write our lyric. our dynamic is kind of unique, whereas like we have zero egos. So, and plus we've known each other for so long that we don't get very precious about lyrics. We don't get precious about melodies, about drum grooves, about guitar lines. Like it's really just all that matters is what's best for the song. So I might be writing a lyric or a melody or something, and if Eris doesn't feel like it fits really well with that section, even though he's not singing and he's not a singer, I'm not going to, box him out or ignore his comments. Usually I'll take it pretty close to heart. And that's how we approach everything. So lyrics are, anyway, long story to get to the lyric, but Eris, I don't know if you want to expand upon those lyrics.
Yeah. So that song was a pretty personal one. I think it was really about like fighting through a whole bunch of change. And then sometimes you fight so hard for what you want and you get it. And then at the end, you're just like so broken by the end of the process. And it was kind of about that. It was about sort of fighting your way through and then realizing that there are consequences to having gotten what you wanted, and just feeling like that's all that you just sort of crossed the finish line, but you're practically that you just survived. There's not much more to it than that. So it was about navigating change, and we try not to be like too explicit about unpacking the actual sort of lyrical inspiration, because we know that everyone connects to it in a different way. But fundamentally, it was about pushing through, but getting but sort of ending up on the other side, getting what you want, but being sort of broken as a result of it.
Yeah, and the thing,
wanting more than that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that a lot of what I love about lyrics is that it can be interpreted in so many different ways, and I think we always tend to gravitate towards lyrics that can be misconstrued, but in a good way, or and I think that a lot of our songs are like that.
Yeah, it's been really actually interesting seeing people guess at what we're trying to say. I know that when the music video for Invisible came out and people were dissecting those lyrics, we saw lots of very different interpretations than necessarily what we wrote. And it's kind of cool. It might not have been what we intended, but if it means something for someone in a different way and they connected to it, that's great. That's the beauty of music, is that there's that kind of underlying melody and probably an emotion that comes through it. But then the way that you interpret the words and apply it to what it means to you, and if that helps you connect with it, that's great. That's what's beautiful about music.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and you guys mentioned Deftones too. Like they're a band where I know, at least from what I've read, I know Chino kind of likes to leave things more open to interpretation to the listeners. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I was just like, oh, those are some lines that really stuck out to me. And then The Truth, I know from what I read about that one, it's about, and I definitely think it comes through in the lyrics, but it's about trying, over and over again to make a broken relationship work. And one of the lines that I think is really awesome is, we bear this cross to forget our loss. And again, I think I just kind of related to that a lot, because I went through a pretty difficult breakup a couple of years ago. That was not to air dirty laundry, because I ain't like that, but it was very abrupt and kind of like all of us go through. It was pretty earth shattering at the time. And so and I just felt this was a very I could feel Clint's vibe in this song a lot. And like you guys mentioned at the jump, his voice, his guitar work, and his ability as a multi-instrumentalist, I thought Arc, that you guys went back and forth really well, but that was a really powerful line too, that, we bear this cross to forget our loss. I just thought that was a great kind of way to describe going through, trying to make something work, and you feel like it's it's not gonna, but you keep trying. I thought that was really, really a beautiful line.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, it can be difficult to admit sometimes when you're losing, difficult to sort of admit that things didn't work out. And I think that's something everyone can connect with.
Yeah, and for you guys, just to build on that, and thanks again so much, dudes, for taking the time to do this. I really am enjoying this conversation. Again, I think what's really cool and what I've really enjoyed about doing this podcast, it really is about connecting and building relationships with people, and again, music is sort of that universal language that it doesn't matter what part of the world you're from, you can hear a melody, or you can feel a drum beat, a guitar riff, a really good line, and it'll connect with you. But again, I felt sort of a synergy with you guys even more when I read about the band, and as we're talking about these things, especially a song like that. And congrats, by the way, because I saw that the music video, as of recording this in early June, is already over 12,000 views, I think, in the little over a week here. But one of the things that struck me about sort of the mission statement of this project, being a voice for unspoken conflict. I mean, I've never really heard it put that way, unspoken conflict, but it was like that hit me at my core, because I feel like that's kind of like what my anxiety and compulsions really deal from. It's like the things that you kind of bury deep down, that you feel almost like a stigma, or you don't want to be a burden by sharing it with other people. But I feel like so much of what we're talking about is that with this kind of music, and it seems like your guys' connection to it as well is it isn't heaviness for just heaviness sake. It's going to those places that maybe a lot of us lock away or we shove down. And I think as you age, or at least as I've aged, you realize that's really like the worst thing you can do, is to not express it, because you'll eventually just become a ticking time bomb and explode. But I also think it takes courage. And that's what I've learned as I've gotten older too. It takes courage to kind of open up, and whether it's through music or therapy, or just even talking with friends and getting stuff off your chest. So my question in that is just, how have you guys gotten to that place? Did it take time to get to that vulnerability standpoint with your music to go to those places? Because I know it's difficult for some people, whether they're artists or not, to go there. And I think it's really cool that you guys do that in your music.
I mean, for me, it's always been natural to do that. I think since we started writing together, everything that we were personally going through, the easiest way to vent or to get it out was through music, writing lyrics, or just writing melodies and recording ideas and songs, and just putting down those emotions into and creating, putting them into channeling it through the music. So I think that's how, at least that's how I've always coped with it, with conflict, with anything that's going sour or weighing on me. Music has been the language that works best.
I think this has always been our form of therapy. We've, for better or for worse, been known each other for a very long time, and I think has helped both of us, and certainly for me, help process the struggles that we've been going through. So that mission statement that you were talking about is just as much, it's not just about the voice and the message we're trying to communicate. It's also what's helped us push through. And maybe there are times in the past where we probably should have gone to therapy or something else like that, but music has been our drug, and has been our form of therapy, whether it's been writing our own, or it's been listening to the artists that we admire and love. It's just been the way that we've been able to process things. And yeah, there's I think every one of those songs, we want to make sure that it comes from a place of emotional depth and authenticity. And so hopefully that's coming across. And a big part for us has been making sure that the lyrics they might have different interpretations for the two of us, but that we both connect to it individually. So yeah, I think you're picking up on the right stuff there.
Yeah, we always joke. I always, joke that, I don't know that I'd be alive today if I couldn't communicate through get it out through the songs. And I know Eris probably feels a similar thing with that. there are moments in life that feel, overbearing, and you just don't know how to deal with it. And so, I always think, like, what would I do without the music? And so it's it's a big form of therapy for the both of us.
I appreciate y'all sharing that, man. Yeah, I mean, even though I'm not a musician, and I poorly noodle on the guitar that I have in my bedroom, and would never tell a soul here in Nashville that I play, because I don't practice nearly enough to be any good. It's certainly not a level you guys, but it is fun to kind of just pick around, and it's just cool how sounds and melodies really can get you through things, and also lyrics. And after you go through certain things, you hear songs differently. It's strange how and I'm sure you guys have had that experience too, like a song you listen to and just appreciated it maybe musically, but then you go through either a breakup or something happens in your life, good or bad, and it gives you either a new appreciation or just kind of a different view. Like, I remember one of the first times I listened to Black from Pearl Jam after I went through heartbreak. I was like, ooh, I feel like I understand what Eddie's saying now on a completely different level. And it was sad, but it was also beautiful. And I think that's something with music too, especially heavier music, where it explores things that, and again, I love pop, and I love 80s, and I love a lot of modern music too, that maybe doesn't necessarily go to quote unquote really dark places. But I think that's something that I've even learned through my anxiety, and just and going through therapy and stuff and dealing with it, is that it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's how you channel it. That's important. So it's cool that you guys have really discovered that as well,
100%. Yeah. I'm glad that you're bringing that up, and it's super encouraging to sort of see that people are talking about anxiety and depression in a way that certainly, if we go back to the times of, we talked about Linkin Park, right? And so Chester Bennington was always a huge inspiration for us. And obviously he tragically took his own life. In fact, one of the songs on the upcoming record is about him, and is about dealing with that tragedy itself. Like, he was such a huge and influential person. But the reason I mentioned that is because obviously he was someone who severely battled depression and anxiety. And I think a lot of artists do. And I know that's something that I personally struggle with quite a bit. And it's really encouraging to hear that it's now socially acceptable, or it's more common for people to talk about, because I think especially those people who get into heavier music tend to be more maybe empathetic, or are more willing to sort of go to those places and explore those emotions that they feel. And so music is a really great, I don't know if drug is the right word, because that sort of implies a negative, but the music can really be an amazing thing that helps you get through those times. But thank you for bringing that up. I think it's really important that more people in the music community talk about it, because we need to make sure that there aren't any more Chesters, basically. Or you know what I mean? We want more talented people like Chester's, but certainly not what happened to him to happen again.
Yeah, like I was hearing the other day, is it David from Disturbed? Is that his name, David Draymond?
Yeah.
He was talking about, he mentioned Chester and Chris's deaths, and he was, I think, at a show. I saw a video, and he mentioned that he was contemplating the other day doing the same thing. And it shows you that you don't, no matter how much money you have or fame or whatever it is, people are, anyone could be going through that. So it's definitely a relevant thing to be talking about.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys sharing that, man. And yeah, it's one of the things that I've struggled with my whole life. And and I think what was scary is that when I was younger, when you're a kid and you experience, whether it's a panic attack for the first time, or any kind of maybe an anxiety attack for the first time, or any of those kind of, whether it's social situations, things like that, like my first reaction is kind of, that fight or flight to avoid it. Like, oh, I don't want to get sick. And then there's also sort of the shame attached to it. And especially as a man, and I don't know, maybe it's just part of where I grew up in the Midwest. where it's just kind of like, hey, you rub some dirt on it and, boys don't cry, that type of thing. And there's a certain level of that I do think is necessary in life, a certain level of tough love and self-discipline and pushing through pain, which is a good thing. It's good to challenge yourself and go through adversity. But when you're made to feel like you can't express those things, it almost exacerbates them more in a negative way, because you're like, oh gosh, is my pain going to be a burden to somebody else? So I'm thankful that we're now at a place where I do feel like we've come a long way, at least in the States, as men, where I feel like it's more out in the open. And sadly, I think it's come partially at the cost of us seeing people like Chris Cornell pass away, or Chester Bennington, and have these unnatural deaths, where it kind of illuminates like, wow, there's really successful people who have touched millions of people around the globe, and they're going through this too. And I hate that it takes things like that to make people kind of reset, but at the same time, their music will live on forever. And the way they express themselves through that, I'm really grateful. So it's kind of like a weird double-edged sword, you know what I mean? You wish they were still here, but you're happy for what they left behind. And in a way, those kind of things sort of illuminate even Kurt Cobain way back in the day. I think that was probably one of the first ones that really shot shockwaves through the music industry, where Nirvana's at their apex and it's like, oh my gosh, Kurt Cobain's dead. You know what I mean? Like, it's horrible, but at the same time, I think it's good that we're at a place now where we're all talking about it. So I hope that made sense. That was kind of just a stream of consciousness, but I appreciate the conversation that you guys are even sharing in this about it, because I do think it's important. And I think we've come a long way over the last 30 years. We still got a ways to go, but I hope even people listening to this know that it's okay to talk about those things. And whether you're a man, woman, whatever you are, man, like it, there's healthy ways to go through those things, and you don't have to go through it alone. So I appreciate the conversation that you guys are being willing to go to those places even here too.
100%. Well said, Mike. Yeah, totally agreed.
No problem. Yeah, of course.
Well, and before we wrap it up, fellas, because I told you I'd get you out of here at 3, and I don't want to disrespect your time. I really appreciate the conversation. Arc and Eris, thank you so much. I really like what you guys are doing. I can't wait to listen to the rest of At War, and I think it's cool that you've got a tribute to Chester on there. But I guess just to put a button on this bad boy, since we're on this topic, and it ties into the theme of the show and even what you guys do about, getting through the darkness to get through the light. Anything that you guys want to share as far as, Eris, you mentioned battling anxiety yourself, and I'm sorry to hear that you go through it too, but I'm happy we're talking about it. For anybody out there right now who's listening to this, who might be struggling, anything that you guys want to share in terms of things that have helped you kind of persevere and move forward in your lives, whether it's through anxiety or just pain or any type of difficulties that you think might benefit a listener who maybe is going through a tough time right now?
Yeah, happy to go first, and then Art, feel free to jump in here. Yeah, I was always, it took me a long time before I actually properly tried to deal with all that kind of stuff. So I remember the first time I went to therapy, what was pretty enlightening for me as someone who did it fairly light in life and tried to just push through before, was realizing that anxiety and depression are sort of the same side, two different sides of the same coin. And you can sort of flip back and forth between those two different states. And just learning about that, and like the more that I guess I talk to other people about it, the more that I saw that this is like a well-documented condition and that other people go through it, the more it just felt normal. And so I would just sort of encourage everyone to talk about it. It's obviously difficult, but the more that you can find people that you can lean on to do that, the better, because at the end of the day, if you just sort of lock it all down, it sort of tends to blow up.
Yeah, for me, it's really, there's a lot of similarities to that, but I mean, having someone, having a support system is just super important. Having people who could be there for you, whether it's someone who's known you a long time, family member, spouse, having that support can really take you out of a dark place, and not everybody has that. But you know, if you're not sure, you know, there are definitely numbers that people can, you know, hotlines that people can call to talk to somebody. But just talking about it, you know, there's people don't realize that they're you know, they're not, you know, they think they're alone in it, but there's a lot of people going through the same thing. And I think that's what people sometimes need to hear. That they need to hear that someone else relates, somebody else is going through it and can, you know, get through it and come out the other side. So talking about it, you know, as much as possible, and having somebody there for you, you know, that's helped me a lot in my life. And I hope people keep looking for help.
Well said, gentlemen. Well, Arc, Eris, I can't thank you enough for giving me an hour of your time, especially on a weekend when a lot of people are kind of getting away from work stuff. I really appreciate what you guys are doing. And again, you know, in terms of listening to Set the Sun, and then, you know, doing my homework, which isn't really even homework for me because I love doing this stuff, man. But, you know, reading up more about you guys, I mean, beyond all the names that you guys have worked with, I mean, you guys are obviously pros and very good at what you do. And listening to more of the meaning behind what you guys are doing in this conversation, in addition to reading up about it, just makes me feel even more of a kinship with you. And I hope that doesn't sound weird, but I really appreciate the time. I can't wait to listen to the forthcoming LP, and hopefully our paths, you know, cross down the line in person sooner rather than later. But I know I'm not the only one that's going to be excited to listen to the full length, in addition to Arrival and The Truth. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to come on the podcast, man.
Yeah,
thanks for having us, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We've got a new song that actually ties nicely into this topic we've been just talking about, and it's called "A Better Way to Bleed." And it's really about kind of the theme, ironically, that you were just bringing up, Mike, which is finding a way to better process that pain. And that song actually is the one that's about Chester, or that was inspired by Chester. And about using music as a mechanism, as, you know, as a form of therapy to push through as a better way to bleed, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Like I said, I appreciate you guys taking the time to do the show. You know, it's cool to be at a point where I've been able to, you know, connect with good people and connect with like-minded people. And you know, I try not to get into the comparison game, you know, because it's like, it's real easy to look at really big podcasts and go, oh man, I would love to get to that point maybe one day. But so anytime somebody takes the chance to talk to me, especially as I'm continuing to build this audience and everything, it really means a lot, especially people in the realm of music that I really enjoy. So I know I've said it a lot, but I was raised not to be short of my thank yous, and really appreciate the time and what you guys are doing, man.
Same. Thank you for you know, for exposing more people to more great music and great artists. And
yeah,
you know, you can see your passion and commitment, and the, you know, the authenticity that comes across with your interviewing style. So it's been a real pleasure speaking with you, Mike.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks so much, dude. You're welcome back anytime. And yeah, keep doing your thing, man. Can't wait to listen to the full LP. And yeah, you guys are welcome back anytime. I hope you have a great rest of the weekend. Let's keep in touch.
Yeah, keep in touch.
That's great.
Alrighty dighty, there you have it. That was my conversation with Arc and Eris of Set the Sun. Make sure you go follow these guys on Instagram at Set the Sun Band. The links to all of their stuff will be in the podcast description for this episode. So just scroll down to the bottom of the podcast description, hit those links, and go follow and support my dudes in Set the Sun. You won't be disappointed, man. Like I said at the jump, if you love bands like Sleep Token, Deftones, North Lane, and just in general, if you're a fan of just awesome melodies, emotive lyrics, electronic elements, ethereal elements, great rhythm section, these guys do it all, man. And I'm really excited to hear their forthcoming LP, At War, so stay tuned for that. And once again, go check out their new singles, Arrival, The Truth. which features Clint Lowery, and the latest one, A Better Way to Bleed, which again is a tribute to the late, great Chester Bennington. I just want to say once again to Arc and Eris, thank you so much, you guys, for taking the time to come on this podcast and share your story with me and the listeners of this show. It was great to delve into, deeper topics like anxiety, like depression, and talk about how that has weaved its way into your music and how music is really a catharsis for you guys to deal with a lot of that stuff. And again, how A Better Way to Bleed was talking about, just finding a better way to deal with the pain and the rage that we all feel, and how Chester was an inspiration. I relate to all of it, man, as somebody who struggles with anxiety, as somebody who struggles with panic attacks at times, who struggles with self-doubt, all that stuff. I think we can all relate to it. And I think it's hard for a lot of us to talk about it, and to be able to have a platform like this where I'm able to touch on those subjects with guests in a way that I hope is informative and helpful for everybody listening, man. Like, it truly means a lot. So once again, Arc and Eris, I just want to say thank you so much for being willing to go to those places with me, geeking out about Sevendust and all the guys in Sevendust and Clint Lowery. Like, it's so cool that you guys have gotten to know him and work with him. Even though I only got to talk to him briefly on this podcast, and I got to meet him way back in 2013 when they did an in-store appearance at Culture Clash Records in my hometown of Toledo, Ohio. Shout out Culture Clash, and shout out the late Pat, who used to own the store. He died shortly after I moved to Nashville, unfortunately, but Pat was awesome. Sold me my first album, Mastodon, Crack the Sky. Great record. I digress. But yeah, man, it was just really cool to learn more about your guys' story with Set the Sun. Excuse me. And learn about your relationship just as friends and as collaborators and musicians, man. Like, I really enjoyed our conversation, and I know the listeners will as well, and you guys are welcome back anytime. So once again, everybody, go follow Set the Sun at Set the Sun Band on Instagram. Go check out their latest singles. Stay tuned for their forthcoming LP, At War, and go check out their initial stuff that came out last year, In Absentia Volume 1 and In Absentia Volume 2. Great listens as well. And yeah, man, just go support these guys, dudes. I'm really excited to hear the full length, and I just can't wait to check out the rest of it. So once again, everybody, you can follow me on Instagram at March 4th Pod. You can follow me on YouTube at March 4th Pod. My website is march4th.podbean.com. If you did like what you heard, please take the time to like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Leave a rating and a review on either Spotify or Apple, whatever you use. You're listening to the show, so you've got a podcast app of some sort, but all those things go a long way in helping the show get out to more people. And even though I hate begging for the likes and the subs and all that stuff, man, as somebody who's got a smaller but growing platform with this podcast, I really want to get these conversations out to more people and put people on to awesome artists like Set the Sun and more importantly, good dudes in Arc and Eris. So if you would be so kind, please take the time, if you enjoyed the show, to share it, man. It really, truly means a lot. And once again, I'm really humbled, man, to have episode 110 in the books. It's kind of crazy to say out loud. It's crazy how time flies over these past 3+ years that I've been doing March 4th consistently. And I would not have been able to get to episode 110 without all the people who love and support me, man, from close family and friends to people around the world who download the show, and all the wonderful people that I've been able to connect with on social media. Guys like Johnny Zirkle of High Road Publicity, who's been sending me all kinds of awesome artists to get on the show, like Set the Sun. I'm really grateful, man, and shout out to the Nashville Voyager and Canvas Rebel who have featured the podcast. There's, I think, going to be another one in the works. So I'm just humbled by the attention and the growth and the love and support. And I mean it when I say thank you, and I love you, man. So that's going to be a wrap for this week's episode. I love you all. Keep the faith and be kind to one another. Courtesy of Arc and Eris from Set the Sun. This is their latest single, A Better Way to Bleed. Peace.